All right, let's dive into some serious wisdom today. We're going deep into chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita,
Yeah,
which is basically like a crash course on life, the universe, and everything.
it's a good way to put it.
It's like a philosophical dialogue between a warrior named
Mhm.
Arjuna, who's having a bit of an existential crisis, and his charioteer, Krishna, who just so happens to be a god in disguise.
Yeah, this chapter really gets to the heart of Hindu philosophy. It's all about understanding the nature of reality, the soul, and how we fit into this grand cosmic scheme.
So imagine you're Arjuna, feeling totally lost and confused. You turn to Krishna and you ask, like, what is this life thing all about?
Right.
What is my soul, and how do my senses even work?
Hmm.
Are they showing me the real deal or just some kind of illusion?
Yeah,
Heavy stuff, right?
definitely. And Krishna, being the ultimate wise guide, uses these questions as a springboard to explain his view of reality.
Got it.
He introduces these two key concepts, Kurukshetra, meaning the field, and Kutrajna, meaning the knower.
Okay, so Kurukshetra, it's like the entire playing field of life. It's not just our physical body, but our thoughts, emotions, senses, desires, everything we experience on a material level.
Right.
It's like the whole sensory playground we're interacting with.
Precisely.
Okay.
And Kutrajna is the part of us that observes all of this. It's our consciousness, the awareness that sits behind all our experiences.
Right.
It's like the silent witness to everything happening in the field.
So it's like there's this distinction between the world out there and the perceiver within.
Right.
But how do these concepts, how do they apply to, like, me in my daily life?
Think of it this way. Kurukshetra is constantly changing. Our bodies age, our emotions fluctuate, thoughts come and go. But Kshetrajna, the knower, is unchanging. It's the constant observer of all this change. Recognizing this distinction is a big step towards self-awareness and understanding your place in the universe.
Wow, that's a pretty profound way to look at things.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, if everything in the field is temporary, what's truly lasting?
Exactly, and that's where Krishna's description of the Supreme Soul comes in.
Okay.
This is where things get really mind-blowing. He describes this Supreme Soul as being omnipresent, all-seeing, all-knowing, basically the source of everything.
Okay, hold on. Omnipresent. Does that mean the Supreme Soul is, like, everywhere?
Yes.
Even in, like, my messy apartment?
It's like saying the divine essence is woven into the fabric of reality,
Okay.
permeating everything.
Yeah.
It's both within us and outside of us, kind of like how the air we breathe is both inside our lungs and all around us.
Whoa, I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
Oh.
So if this Supreme Soul is everywhere, even within us, does that mean we're all connected on some deep level?
That's a core idea in the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
We're not just isolated individuals,
Yeah.
but interconnected threads in the tapestry of existence. And recognizing that interconnectedness is a key part of the spiritual journey Krishna is laying out.
All right, this is already making me rethink things.
Yeah.
So we've got the field, the knower, and this Supreme Soul that's like the ultimate source of everything.
Right.
But where do we fit into all this?
Yeah.
Are we just along for the ride, or do we have some say in how things play out?
Great question. This is where the concept of nature and spirit comes in.
Okay.
And it gets to the heart of our agency in the universe.
Okay, I'm all ears. Break it down for me.
Well, think of nature as the set of rules that governs the material world. It provides the raw materials and the forces that shape our experiences. It's like the game board and the rule book all rolled into one.
And spirit, that's us,
Correctly.
the players in this cosmic game.
Spirit is the conscious element, the one experiencing and interacting with the field.
Okay.
It's our awareness, our capacity to make choices, our free will.
So we're not just puppets being controlled by the forces of nature.
No.
We actually have some say in how we move through this field of life.
Absolutely, and that's a crucial point. The Bhagavad Gita emphasizes that we have agency, the power to choose how we respond to the circumstances life throws our way.
Okay.
And the choices we make shape not only our present experience, but also our future.
Now that's empowering.
Yeah.
It's like we have the potential to be co-creators with nature, shaping our own destiny.
Precisely. And understanding the interplay of nature and spirit, the field and the knower, helps us to navigate the game of life with more awareness and intention. It's about recognizing the forces at play and making choices that align with our highest aspirations.
Okay, this is all starting to click. We've got the playing field,
Yeah.
the players, the rule book,
Mhm.
and even a glimpse of the divine source behind it all.
Right.
But Krishna doesn't stop there, does he?
No, he doesn't.
He actually gives us some guidance on how to play this game well.
That's right.
In the next part of chapter 13, Krishna outlines the qualities that distinguish wisdom, from ignorance,
Mm.
which is basically a roadmap for making choices that lead to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
That's right.
All right, now we're talking. Who doesn't want a roadmap to a better life? Let's dive into those wisdom nuggets in part 2 of our deep dive into chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita.
So picking up where we left off, Krishna dives into the characteristics of wisdom and ignorance in chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita. This is where the rubber really meets the road, where philosophy gets practical and gives us some guidelines for living a life that's more aligned with our true nature.
Okay, I'm ready for some actionable wisdom.
Yeah.
What kind of qualities is Krishna talking about?
Well, he lists out traits like humility, self-control, nonviolence, forgiveness, and detachment. These are the hallmarks of a person who's starting to see beyond the illusions of the field and connect with the knower within.
I'm trying to picture someone who embodies all those qualities, like a total Zen master, right? Someone who's completely unfazed by the ups and downs of life.
That's a great image. And while it might sound like a lofty ideal, Krishna isn't suggesting we all become emotionless robots.
Right.
It's more about cultivating a sense of inner peace and stability amidst the chaos of life. It's about responding to challenges with wisdom and grace, rather than getting swept away by our reactions.
So it's not about suppressing our emotions, but about learning to manage them in a way that doesn't throw us off balance.
Exactly. And the Bhagavad Gita offers some pretty practical advice on how to do that.
Good.
For example, Krishna emphasizes the importance of self-control, especially when it comes to our senses and desires.
Yeah, that makes sense. Our senses can be pretty powerful, especially in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with stimulation.
Right.
It's like our desires are always being pulled in a million different directions.
Right. And Krishna points out that if we let our senses and desires run wild, we become slaves to them. We get caught up in the pursuit of fleeting pleasures and end up feeling empty and dissatisfied.
It's like that saying, I shop, therefore I am. It's so easy to get caught up in the cycle of wanting and getting, but it rarely leads to lasting happiness.
Exactly. And that's where detachment comes in. It's not about denying ourselves pleasure,
Okay.
but about cultivating a sense of inner freedom from our desires. It's about recognizing that true happiness doesn't come from external things, but from a deeper connection with our true selves, with the knower within.
Okay, this is all starting to resonate with me.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, sometimes those desires feel so strong, so real.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you even begin to detach from something that feels so ingrained in your being?
That's a really important question, and one that the Bhagavad Gita addresses directly. Krishna explains that one of the biggest obstacles to liberation is our attachment to the fruits of our actions. We get so focused on the outcome,
Right.
on what we're going to get out of something, that we lose sight of the present moment and the joy of simply being.
You know, it's funny you say that because I was reading an article the other day about how our brains are wired to seek rewards. So we're constantly chasing that dopamine hit.
Exactly. And while that reward system is part of what makes us human, it can also lead us down a path of endless striving and dissatisfaction. The Bhagavad Gita is essentially a guide to rewiring our brains, so to speak, to find fulfillment in something deeper and more lasting than fleeting pleasures.
So it's like we need to train ourselves to find satisfaction in the process, in the journey itself, rather than getting fixated on the destination.
That's a great way to put it. And Krishna actually offers some specific practices to help us do just that.
Okay.
He talks about the importance of meditation, selfless action, and cultivating a sense of devotion to something greater than ourselves.
Okay, those all sound like valuable practices, but can you unpack them a bit for me? Like, what does Krishna actually mean by selfless action?
Well, it's about shifting our focus from what's in it for me to how can I serve.
Okay.
It's about acting in a way that benefits others without expecting anything in return.
So it's like volunteering at a soup kitchen or donating to a charity.
Those are certainly examples of selfless action, but it can also be more subtle than that. It could be simply listening attentively to a friend who's going through a hard time or offering a helping hand to a stranger.
I like that. It's like finding ways to bring a bit more kindness and compassion into our daily interactions.
Exactly. And the beauty of selfless action is that it not only benefits others, but
Yeah.
it also benefits us. It helps us to break free from the chains of our own ego and connect with something larger than ourselves.
That makes sense. It's like when you help someone else, you kind of forget about your own problems for a while.
Right.
It shifts your perspective.
Precisely. And that shift in perspective is a key part of the spiritual journey. It's about moving from a self-centered view of the world to a more expansive, interconnected one.
This is all making me think about those qualities of wisdom that Krishna listed earlier, like humility and forgiveness.
Yeah.
It seems like they're all interconnected, right? Like when you start cultivating one quality, the others naturally start to emerge.
That's a great observation. It's like they're all different facets of the same jewel. And the more we cultivate these qualities, the more we start to embody the wisdom that the Bhagavad Gita is pointing to.
But how do we actually put this into practice in our daily lives? I mean, it's one thing to read about these qualities, but it's another thing entirely to actually live them.
You're absolutely right. And that's where the real work begins.
Yeah.
It's a process of continuous self-reflection, of paying attention to our thoughts, actions, and reactions, and making conscious choices that align with our highest aspirations.
So it's not like we just read the Bhagavad Gita and suddenly become enlightened beings.
Yeah.
It's more like a lifelong journey of learning and growth.
Exactly. And the beauty of the journey is that there's always more to discover more, to learn more, to grow into.
I'm starting to realize that this chapter isn't just a bunch of ancient wisdom. It's like a practical guide for navigating the challenges of modern life.
You're getting it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the Bhagavad Gita so timeless and relevant. It speaks to the fundamental questions of human existence. Who are we? What is our purpose? How do we find meaning and fulfillment in a world that's often filled with suffering and chaos?
And what's amazing is that Krishna offers some really concrete answers to those questions. He doesn't shy away from the tough stuff.
You're right. And he provides us with a roadmap, a path to follow if we're willing to do the work.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired. But I'm also realizing that we've only just scratched the surface of chapter 13. There's still so much more to explore.
You're right. We haven't even touched on Krishna's description of the different paths to liberation or his discussion of how our perceptions shape our experience of reality.
Sounds like we've got a lot more ground to cover.
Ah.
Let's dive back into the Bhagavad Gita in part 3 of our deep dive. Okay, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita. We've talked about the field and the knower, nature and spirit, the qualities of wisdom and ignorance. It's like we've been given this incredible map of reality. And now we're starting to see how all the pieces fit together.
Yes, and in this last section of the chapter, Krishna gets even more specific about how we can navigate this map and find our way back to our true nature.
Okay, so where do we go from here? What else does Krishna have to say about this journey of self-discovery?
Well, he talks about the importance of understanding how our perceptions shape our experience of reality.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about the senses being part of the field?
Right, like how our senses can be powerful tools for experiencing the world, but can also sometimes lead us astray if we're not careful.
Exactly. And Krishna uses this really interesting analogy of a light shining through a prism to explain how our individual perceptions color our experience.
Okay.
The light itself is pure and unchanging, but the colors we perceive depend on the angle from which we're viewing it.
Okay, I'm visualizing that.
Right.
So it's like saying reality is this pure, unfiltered light.
Right.
But our individual perspectives are like different prisms, each refracting that light in a unique way.
That's a great way to put it. It means that no two people experience reality in exactly the same way.
Wow.
We all have our own unique filters based on our past experiences, beliefs, and conditioning.
That makes so much sense.
Okay.
It explains why people can have such different reactions to the same event. It's like we're all looking at the same world, but seeing it through different lenses.
Exactly. And Krishna points out that this is one of the biggest challenges on the spiritual path. We often mistake our limited filtered perceptions for the whole truth, when in reality they're just a small sliver of a much larger picture.
So how do we overcome that? How do we start to see beyond our own limited perspectives and get a clearer view of reality?
Well, Krishna says that the key is to cultivate a sense of detachment from our own thoughts and perceptions.
Okay.
It's about learning to observe our minds without getting caught up in the stories they're telling us.
That sounds like a serious mental workout. Like, how do you even begin to separate yourself from your own thoughts? They feel so much a part of who I am.
It definitely takes practice, but one of the tools Krishna recommends is meditation. He says that by quieting the mind and turning our attention inward, we can start to glimpse the true nature of the knower, the part of us that's beyond thought and perception.
You know, it's funny you mentioned meditation, because I've been trying to develop a regular practice lately. I have to admit, it's not easy. My mind is like a wild monkey, constantly swinging from one thought to the next.
I can relate. It's a common experience.
Oh, yeah.
But the more we practice, the more we develop the ability to observe those thoughts without getting carried away by them.
Yeah.
It's like training a muscle. The more we use it, the stronger it becomes.
Okay, that gives me hope. So meditation is one way to start seeing beyond our limited perceptions.
Right.
What are some other paths Krishna talks about?
Well, he also mentions the path of knowledge, which involves studying sacred texts like the Bhagavad Gita, reflecting on their teachings, and engaging in philosophical inquiry.
So it's like using our intellect to deconstruct our limited perceptions
Yeah.
and expand our understanding of reality.
Exactly. It's about using our minds as tools for liberation rather than allowing them to keep us trapped in illusion.
I like that. It's like we're hacking our own mental software, rewiring our brains to see things more clearly.
And then there's the path of selfless action, which we talked about earlier. By shifting our focus from our own needs and desires to the needs of others, we start to break down the walls of our ego and experience a sense of interconnectedness with all beings.
It's like when you do something kind for someone else, you realize that we're all in this together. It shifts your whole perspective from me to we.
Precisely. And that shift in perspective is a key part of the spiritual journey. It's about moving from a sense of separation to a sense of unity.
So it's like all these paths, meditation, knowledge, selfless action,
Yeah.
they're all pointing towards the same goal.
Yeah.
It's about breaking free from the limitations of our ego and reconnecting with our true nature, with the divine spark that resides within us all.
You got it. And Krishna emphasizes that there's no one right path. It's about finding the path that resonates with our individual nature and committing to it with sincerity and devotion.
This has been such an insightful deep dive.
Yeah.
I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of the Bhagavad Gita and its message.
That's great.
But as always, I'm left with even more questions.
That's the beauty of exploring these ancient texts. They open up new worlds of understanding while simultaneously inviting us to keep questioning, keep seeking, keep growing.
So if you're listening to this and feeling inspired to dive deeper into the Bhagavad Gita, what would you say is the most important thing to keep in mind?
I'd say approach it with an open heart and willingness to be challenged. Don't be afraid to ask questions, to grapple with the concepts, to let the teachings stir something within you.
And remember, it's not about memorizing verses or becoming a scholar. It's about applying these timeless teachings to your own life, finding ways to bring more wisdom, compassion, and purpose into your everyday experience.
Exactly. The Bhagavad Gita is a guidebook for living a more meaningful and fulfilling life. A life that's aligned with our true nature as spiritual beings having a human experience.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we leave you with this invitation. Take what resonates with you from this chapter, experiment with the practices, and see how they could transform your own journey. Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.